The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. We're on Mannin Line, open line through till 1 today. Get in touch by calling 66 13 68. You're on the air. Text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177, or email studio@manxradio.com. We've only got 4 days this week because, of course, this Friday is Good Friday. We're into a bank holiday weekend and no Mannin Line next Monday, so 2 4-day weeks. So if you have something to say, then by all means do get in touch. What do you think about this online petition for having a referendum on the island's proposed wind farm? The man behind the petition's calling for a referendum on the proposed wind farm says it's not about being for or against renewable energy, it's about people having a say. His name is John Anslow, and he reckons big decisions are being made without the public actually consenting, pointing to the 20 miles per hour zones and the Liverpool ferry terminal as examples. If you've got any thoughts, well, that or anything else, by all means, do get in touch. And first, David's with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. And I don't know whether you heard the news, about 2 days ago it was, from the Minister from DOI was having consultation about fairness on disc zones.
Right.
Did you?
Yeah, I heard it.
Did you listen to that?
Yeah. What do you make of it all?
I just wonder where we're going and what she's trying to use the parking controllers for. And if you're going to have fairness, wouldn't you be better trying to do an equal thing around the rates? That would be something wonderful to do, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't quite know what she means by fairness. What do you think?
I've no idea. Well, I know the people that live in Douglas are. If she stops that, and you don't have any controls in your own area there, where are you going to park? Everybody's going to park, not in the car park. So they're going to sit in the zones. So if you do away with them, who's going to march around? But I got stopped this morning, and I thought to myself, this fella had a word with me, and he said to me, well, if they're going to do something with the parking controllers, why don't we make them special constables? And then they could do proper, like hair drying work in and around villages and towns in the Isle of Man. But the only trouble is, I had a word with about that, is we'd have to make sure it's all ring-fenced for a specific purpose, not just going to Treasury.
I'm just trying to think, David, who employs the parking controllers these days? Because once upon a time, didn't they put it out to G4S for a while?
Yeah, when it was tendered. No, I'm sorry, it's in the gift of the Minister for DOI.
Right.
And the members that are in that little grouping there, who... just on a sideline, Andy, I just want to mention too, somebody's nicked the poster out of the window in the shelter at Port Jack.
Oh, no.
And I'm waiting. I think somebody's took it as a trophy. I was thinking of taking it myself when a new thing comes back. But anyway, there's no sign of an answer. Now, 6 weeks I've asked the question, A, what's going there, and B, when is it going to happen? Because if it is a risk, and potentially it is a risk, and you look at that area by Port Jack, Chippy there, it's a disgrace. The telephone box is my next thing. I've been up to the reception there at Manx Telecom and said to them, look, I need your email address so I can send you some pictures, and you need to have a look at this telephone box.
What's inside the telephone box, David?
It looks like a bit of old apparatus. Listen, I wouldn't even go in there.
Because some of them have got defibrillators in around the Isle of Man, haven't they? But there's nothing in that one at Port Jack.
No, there's telephone equipment. I didn't pick up the receiver. It looks manic.
Yes.
Or worse than that. But it could be, because somebody did one time around the Isle of Man use the telephone boxes for lending library.
Yeah, they did. They put books in them, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an information place. And I remember it's probably a couple of years ago now when I first came back to the commissioners, we were offered one for £100, I think it was, in Onken, but Max Telecom, or the new owners now, or whatever it was at that time, didn't actually sell it to us, because we thought about the one. And just while I'm on about it too, if anybody's listening from Max Telecom, the one at the top of Royal Avenue is looking a bit sorry too.
Oh, is that the Peter? That's the Peter Kenyon one, isn't it?
Yeah, and the post box. No, I think the Peter Kenyon one. Forget what now. Wasn't that the post box at the post office in the main road there in Onken? Do you remember that they painted it gold, and it was the gold looks a bit lackluster. That's the best word. So I just wonder what we're going to do with
going back to this bus stop then at Port Jack. All joking aside, as you say, somebody's taken the post. They're going to probably put it on eBay now, but
sell it.
Yeah, something needs to be done, because that's that bus shelter's used.
Yes, it is, and there's a major company up at the steps there, and they use it all the time. I've seen them. Yeah. And now we're having a rain, so what do they do? Sit outside. But I just wondered why, in this day and age, they talk about referendums. That's never going to happen. That's why we have politicians, don't we, and MLCs to make decisions on our behalf.
Well, that's interesting. I know you're a football man, so you'll appreciate this. I got a message in from Maureen, who said having a referendum is like having VAR. You know, in football, you employ a referee to make decisions. Now they brought in VAR, so the referee's undermined. Having a referendum, Maureen says, is like having VAR on the democracy.
Yeah, and that's it. Why would we bother then? Next year's election, why don't we just all vote no and then see what happens? It's going to be a bit of a change anyway, because the population itself, I go around, people talk to me all the time, and I don't mind that, from different areas. We've got camper vans lying all over the place. In fact, I've got a question down for Onken, so it's in the public domain tonight, about the abandoned vehicles in Belgravia Road. The horse box is back. I don't think there's any horse in it. But it's no secret as far as I'm concerned. The minister's not cooperating with the local authority, who said we want that as an 1824 zone to move the traffic around. They're just lying there. It's like a graveyard. Right, like Summerland down below there. It's a graveyard for old trucks and old camper vans. Okay. I'm not getting at camper people.
No, that's the thing. Everybody's got a right to have the vehicle that they want, but the trouble is that a lot of the roads weren't designed to take as many vehicles as there are now. So it's all we want is fair's fair.
Yeah, and if some of them, I can tell you, the 7 in Onken haven't moved for about 7 or 8 months. We're coming into the summer season now, and they're still there. They've got grass. Remember that big American job at Belgravia near our tennis courts in Open Park? Yeah. Special prices for people coming from other areas. But it took us ages to get that. It was on his knees, and in the end, they had to drag it away. But who paid for it?
Yeah, I wonder. Okay, all right. Good to hear from you. Goodbye. Thanks, David. All right, now, several areas of the parking system expected to be analysed. There's going to be a review of parking permits. In fact, it's underway at the moment, says the Minister. The DOI Minister is Dr. Michelle Haywood, MHK. And she says the review is going to consider the purpose of the system and the impact on residents, businesses and visitors. In a written response to a Tynwald question from Douglas North MHK, Mr. Wallenberg, she states one of the aspects of the review will be to look at, quote, fairness, unquote. This, claims the Minister, fairness that is, will assess whether the system equitably serves all residents and accounts for different needs across permit zones while considering other stakeholders' needs and wishes. Another area to be analysed is the efficiency of the policy in terms of evaluating administrative processes, enforcing effectiveness and ease of use for residents. I see we're getting away from the jargon anyway. Furthermore, the review is expected to be informed by a number of factors, including comparative analysis with systems in the UK, resident and stakeholder feedback, as well as public engagement. Dr. Haywood adds, any public engagement on the proposed changes to the permit operations is anticipated to start in the fourth quarter of the financial year. Can anybody tell me what that means, please? 17 minutes past 12, and Howard's with us now Hi, Howard.
Hi, Andy. Just listen to David there saying about the traffic wardens, etc. Why not make them special constables? I don't know how that would work in so much as the traffic wardens will be on a particular wage structure, whereas if they made them special constables, they would have to go onto the police pay structure.
I don't know. Who employs the parking controllers at the moment? Do you know, Howard?
They were a private company. I don't know where they've gone. They keep changing. It was G4S for a long while, and then they've gone back to government, and then they change again. But they call them this, walking around with parking controllers on the back, and another one's with parking wardens. So it's another one that nobody knows who's what, when, and why. But essentially, that's not what I come on for. But listen to it. Would these special constables have warrant cards? Would they be able to arrest people? Would they be able to control people? Or are they just basically cardboard replicas that's going to stand somewhere and make it look like there's a lot more bobbies? Now, this is what they find with the PSCOs across. Not all of them are warranted, and they cannot arrest people, and they have to wait or call for another constable to come to arrest somebody that they have stopped. So it's a thin edge, to the wedge of getting the traffic wardens onto the Home Affairs police pay salary spine, which could cost an awful lot more money. But that aside, that's not what I come on for. I just looked on one of the websites there at the suggestions that the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, which has been known for a long, long time, drops the name company and become a statute board. In other words, they're going to be closer aligned to government. Government lent them the money. Government own the company as such, but it's the people of the Isle of Man that own the company, because government don't have any money of their own. The Steam Packet Company are the firm, the company, the long-established company that are running it. But if you get interference from a statutory board, it's they're saying they want to be more like the MUA. So, and we can see exactly what's happened to that. Once the Douglas Corporation, who had Pulrose Power Station, and the out-of-town ones amalgamated, the price just started to go up for the cost of electricity quite a lot, and you quote quite regularly 29 pence a unit. Now, if that's the same situation that the statute board, they will have a board on the Steam Packet Company, but that's a board of directors. And I have fears of this. They're going to be talking about it for 6 months, and that's exactly what would happen. They would talk about all sorts of things, implement things, and that would be all over the heads of the people who actually own the company. And this is something that's just been sneaked in the back door. They only have to look at water, and as I say, the electricity and everything else that the government have got their fingers into with a statutory board, and that's where the trouble starts. And there's no going back from it, because you'd have to go through company law and everything to take all this down and replace it again in the future.
Why do you think this is happening then?
Because they lost their chance to interfere in the last, not government, but the last time they wanted to have a more ongoing interference, and I'll use that word, it will be interference in the running of the steam packet. They lost that ability, and now this is another way around. It's just a bit like when Southern Ireland didn't want to change the punt to the euro, and they voted it out, and the Europeans come back and said, we want another vote, and they had to vote 3 times, and eventually they lost it, and they ended up with the euro. And this is what would happen if the company down there, the Steam Packet Company, a proud company, becomes a statutory board. And that then would give a bigger influence of the civil service and the government in the running of a company. Okay, they lent them the money. We lent them the money, not the government lent them. We lent them the money, and it will be paid back.
Yeah.
And the money's coming from the steam packet in the form of profits. I'm led to believe it was a considerable sum this year. Will go back to the Treasury, coming back to the people of the Isle of Man. But if it becomes a statutory board, then they're going to swap and change this money around. They'll shove a load into the MUA. They'll go for the water board. And this is what they'll keep doing. They keep moving the pot around. And the steam packet now has become a viable company, and they want to get their sticky fingers into the pot.
There's a saying, isn't there, Howard? Success has many fathers, failure's an orphan.
You're right there. But they're going to discuss this supposedly, allegedly, and then within 6 months or less than a year after that, there's going to be an election. So where does it come from? The statutory board. They'll have to have all new faces. And, I don't know, it beggars belief. So let's the people of the island think about this. I'm not saying have a referendum, they're an expensive item. But make sure the people of the island think about this, and too much interference. As I say, too many cooks spoil the broth. And that's what happens when the government get involved with a company that's running our vital shipping line.
Okay, all right. Howard, we appreciate that. Good to hear from you today. Thanks for that.
Take care. Bye now.
All right, 24 minutes past 12. The Isle of Man Planning Department, says text to 142, is apparently using a UK-based planning officer. Isn't this outrageous, given that they'll know nothing about the Isle of Man? I'm assuming they're not engaging with applicants. Well, we didn't know about that, 142, and I've certainly passed that on so we can find out whether or not the planning department is using a UK-based planning officer. A note in from Richard said, we don't need a referendum on wind farm proposals. We need the government to put an immediate halt on all net zero and climate change spending and unnecessary capital projects, then use the funds to prioritise fixing the Isle of Man's broken infrastructure and services first. Thank you, Gaz. Don't waste money on a referendum. MUA tell us what a green kilowatt hour will cost, and then we can vote accordingly for any green supporting election candidate in the future. And WhatsApp 805 says, Andy, didn't the people have their say at the last election, with candidates elected mostly having a green agenda? Thank you, 805. So this is a story about the referendum. John Anslow is the guy's name, who reckons that big decisions are being made without the public's consent or knowledge. Mr. Anslow says it's time that the Manx public got a proper voice on projects like this.
It seems to me that more and more massive capital projects are being forced on us with no real opportunity for the electorate to comment. Recent examples including but not limited to the Liverpool Shed, the 20-mile-an-hour zones and the wind farm. And this petition was really born out of the frustration that I and my acquaintances feel at not being listened to. Whether you consider it a good idea or a bad idea isn't really the point of this petition.
Now, at the heart of your petition is a call for a public referendum. What would you hope such a vote would achieve beyond raising awareness?
If we have a referendum, then everyone has a chance to make their position felt. They don't agree with it, they not agree with it, if they don't want to vote, they don't have to vote. But they then can't claim ignorance.
What would your response be to people who say that a referendum simply isn't practical right now because the referendum law on the Isle of Man dates back to the 1979 and would actually take a fairly substantial period of time to actually overhaul before anything was actionable?
Get it done.
That's John Anslow. get it done. That's what he said. Chris Thomas, MHK, one of the Douglas Central MHK, says if the Isle of Man's outdated referendum law is modernised, it could give the public, that's you by the way, the power to call a vote on big issues. Chris Thomas has been working on updating the 1979 Act, but says progress has been slow. He's largely having to do it on his own. Chris Thomas is expected to ask for more time with the hope of bringing forward changes by the end of this year. But he's also reminding everyone, really, that the Isle of Man is a representative democracy, not a referendum democracy.
There is a place for referendum. So in national British terms, it was only on things like constitutional change. In Ireland, they started doing referendum on stuff like abortion, and more recently across, we now have referendum at local level about introducing mayors. We have referendum about increasing the council tax by more than a certain percentage. So there are all sorts of issues where referendum are becoming used, but we have to remember that primarily our system is a system of having elections from time to time. And I guess you're completely right. It could be that the public is dissatisfied that there's a lack of mandate for the politicians now, and they want the election to come along, and in the meantime they vent their disappointment through calling for referenda.
That's Chris Thomas. And I wonder what your thoughts are. They cost money. I mean, they cost a lot of money, a referendum on the Isle of Man, in particular if it were just a single issue referendum, would cost money to put on, with all the returning officers, the staff, the people to look after the ballot boxes, the counters. Everything would have to be sorted out, let alone everybody having a day off when that happens at the places, the polling stations. So what do you think about this? Now, bearing in mind the next general election is Thursday, 24th of September next year, so we're not that long away, year and a bit away, really, from election time next year. And it will be an important election. And if you can vote, I urge you to vote and think very carefully about how you vote and get to know the candidates. When it happens next year, we'll do all we can. We'll do our level best to make sure that every candidate has some time on the air. We chat to people. We go around and do broadcasts in regional areas to them. But what do you expect from your politicians? Is, as David was saying, you elect politicians to make decisions. Now, if they make decisions you don't like, whose fault is that? You elected them, so it could be said it's your fault. You get the politicians you deserve. And if you don't get the politicians you deserve, maybe it's your chance to step up and put your name down as a candidate. Politics is like nature. It abhors a vacuum. So if nobody stands, somebody's going to get in anyway. Somebody may get in unopposed. We say that democracy is worth fighting for. People gave their lives over the past 100 and more years. They gave their lives so that we could have a democracy where people will be able to vote in politicians simply by voting, not by the gun, not by a revolution, but by a vote. Have a think about it. Would you back a referendum on the Isle of Man, or do we leave it to the politicians? We elect them, we trust them, and then we see what happens.
No matter how much you need to dig, or how much you want to dump, Fox Group Isle of Man offer an extensive range of plant hire, long-term lease and sales. We're the island's exclusive supplier for Louis Gong excavators with immediate delivery. Our machinery comes with a complete service package with finance plan options. Call John on 458946 to discuss your plant needs. Fox Group Isle of Man, part of the Fox Group of companies.
It's time to start enjoying the garden. And from barbecues to garden furniture and machinery, tools and plants, Riley's Garden Centre has everything you need. Call Road Braddon and rileys.co.im or follow them on Facebook or Instagram.
Enjoy a fabulous getaway right on your doorstep at Trail Lodge Ballasalla, with fabulous boutique accommodation at beautiful Silverdale Glen, perfect for couples and small or large groups. From luxurious Egyptian cotton sheets, wet rooms and flat screen TVs to total immersion in the stunning surrounds of Silverdale Glen, Trail Lodge Ballasalla has something for everyone, whether total relaxation or exhilarating adventures. Plus, we have brand new self-contained luxury lodges coming this year. Visit traillodge.im to find out more. more.
Road racing is back on the island, and Manx Radio 1368 will be an essential part of it, bringing live practice and race commentary, news, travel and more to the island and the world on AM, online and digital. With airtime, sponsorship and digital advertising options available now, it's your chance to reach a global motorsports audience. So contact our sales team on 682 620 or on sales@manxradio.com. Manx Radio 1368, the best biking station in the world.
This Tuesday at 5:30 here on Manx Radio, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for the last in this current series of Countryside.
I head up to Bolgene Farm in Laxey to speak to the NFU president and farmer Ian Parsons.
And I went along to Bala Cricket Farm to speak to Vicky Sloan-Masson on their fantastic news that they've been announced as one of the winners of the Holstein UK Master Breeder Awards for 2025.
That's all in Countryside Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 5:30, and don't forget you can download or subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Note in from Mark, who says we've got an elective dictatorship as for referendums on important decisions. Very few, if any, of the major policies that this and many other administrations ever appear on a manifesto. They either come from the unelected senior civil servants or individual MHKs who knew they were going to put forward these policies before they wrote their manifesto. Mr. Cannon didn't tell of his true intentions before he was elected. Well, he wasn't elected as Chief Minister. He was elected as a member for Ayr and Michael, but I get the point. The plan to increase the population after 3 years is failing, says Mark. We remain short of money and the population hasn't encouraged new taxpayers to come here in any numbers that will make the short-term benefit that Mr. Cannon wants. It's an example of spiral economics, as those that may come here will one day need their medical requirements, etc., paying for by those working in the future. So as a result, we bring in more people then, etc., etc. Any economist will tell you this, but Mr. Cannon and all clearly didn't even talk to one as such. Furthermore, the decision to drop the Kroger plan and not have £2.6 billion, these are Mark's calculations, £2.6 billion over 20 years, is clearly not supported by the population. A referendum on this would clearly prove it. Just think what we could do with £2.6 billion. We are an elective dictatorship. There's very little democracy here. It's not a representative democracy, says Mark. We never get what we vote for because no one's elected on policies, because there's no party politics. The next election cycle needs to address this with a group of candidates prepared to be elected collectively on a shared manifesto. Then, says Mark, we would have democracy. We don't have it now. And that's Mark's point of view. And here's Julian. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Just talking about going for this referendum. One of the first questions would be, is it going to be isolated to the Isle of Man? Because nobody off the island should be able to vote, and that's easy to do because you can limit the IP range to just the Isle of Man internet-connected computers and phones.
Oh, so you wouldn't have an actual paper referendum? Would you do it on the web?
Well, I don't know. I mean, paper referendum, if you're going to do that, then you have to have the ID verified and where you live, this type of thing, haven't you, if you're going to do it properly. Whether or not it's worth asking people in a referendum for a business sector that looks to be imploding. I notice Ørsted are now down at 83% drop since their peak. And even Goldwind in China, the largest Chinese wind turbine manufacturer, has dropped 74% in the last 2.5 years. So, it's kind of like, do we really want to be putting our feet into something that seems to be imploding? But just before we get on the referendum, it turns out that the environmental impact assessment by Wardell Armstrong up at Erie Staine, DEFRA requires that the licences have to be granted before you can disturb animals to Schedule 1 and 5. And it turns out that they admit that even though there's apparently been going on for around a year, no licences have been granted until a week ago. So they've lost a year's worth of environmental impact assessments. So the ecological surveys. I
wonder why they didn't get the licences before.
Well, if you're going to follow the law, I mean, if you haven't got a driving license, you can't drive a car, can you? So, if you get caught and you say, "Oh, well, I'll get one," that's not a defence, is it?
Well, yeah, but if you look at the planning law, you can get retrospective planning on something, so you can crack on without planning and get it in the future. So maybe this is the sort of thing that applies at Erie Stane.
Well, the wildlife's been disturbed. Clearly, I mean, they've been putting maps out for lizards and all sorts of stuff. So under Section 9, Subsection 4 of the Wildlife Act of 1990, it is an offence to intentionally or recklessly disturb any animal listed under Schedule 5, or Schedule 1. So, I think probably the head of DEFRA needs to come on and explain exactly what's been going on. I mean, if they're going to start issuing, are they fit for purpose at DEFRA if they're just letting people go up and disturb wildlife for over a year, and now it turns out there's no licence ever been granted? So, talk about referendum, but hang on a minute, is this going to now, and of course you need about a year to 2 years to digest all the content of that EUA before you can go to planning application. So the planning application must be delayed at least a year now, I would have thought. Well, so you can't do it this year, surely.
I can tell you that the DEFRA minister is going to be on Mannin Line next month on Wednesday, May the 7th. Claire Barber will be on from DEFRA. Actually, on the same day, Dr. Allenson will be on, and we got Angie Lund, who's a member of the energy efficiency team. So we're talking about many things on that day. Wednesday, May the 7th, DEFRA will be on. So maybe we'll get to the bottom of that.
Yeah. Speaking of things to do with net zero, I noticed that Wales is now completely reversing all their 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that they instituted back to 30 because it's not working. Chaos with traffic jams, more pollution being detected in the atmosphere. So it was a complete waste of time, and they've already spent $5 million partially reversing it from an original cost of $35 million. So nobody really knows how much it's going to cost to reverse all that.
Where did you see that? Where did you see that, Julian?
That's Wales Online. That's the largest. It's like their biggest online newspaper, you might say.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. Mark said, we are a representative democracy, but I don't feel represented. We've basically elect our MHKs blind as we have no idea what the government's agenda will be. Well, we've always done that. We've always elected MHKs basically, I think, based on reputation, whether it's, a new candidate who comes forward. And remember, this is a fairly... I don't mean to be disparaging, but this is a fairly inexperienced Keys in that we haven't got any MHKs who've been in for 20 years. A few have been in for 2 or 3 elections, but years gone by we had MHKs who've been in for 20 years, 30 years in some cases, and we had MLCs who'd been in the political system for many, many years. We lost one at the last MLC election. Mr. Henderson had been an MHK for many, many years and an MLC. So I take your point that we do elect our MLCs without kind of knowing what they are, unless you know the MHKs personally. And many people do know their MHK personally. But you get what I'm saying. If people are talking for party politics on the Isle of Man, well, we do have party politics to a small degree in that we have the Liberal Vannin Party and we have the Manx Labour Party. 2 MHKs are in the Manx Labour Party, and Mr. Hooper is the head of Liberal Vannin. In the past, there were many more members of the Manx Labour Party who were MHKs. I think it was up to about 6 at one time in Keys. But party politics has never really caught on the Isle of Man. I'm not saying it couldn't, it just seems not to have in the past.
I am one car centre, the place to go. Great choice and prices so low. I am one car centre on Domain Road. Cars of every kind at prices that are hard to find. Visit on Facebook to see the range or call 611 040. Great service, choice and prices low. I am one car centre, the place to go.
Whatever your business, whatever its size, you can always rely on the island's leading fuel and oil supplier to keep you moving. Ellen Vannin Fuels, powering the island and powering industry. Call us on 844 000.
Quality, economy, that's what we're all about.
Imagine relaxing in your new luxury bathroom with the latest bathroom suite. Or how about a stunning wet room with contemporary designer tiles? Turn your dreams into reality at a price you can afford at Pacesetter. Visit the Pacesetter Bathroom and Tile Showroom, Harris Terrace.
That's what we're all about.
Easter Sunday and Monday, bring the family to the Gradle Glen Railway Easter Bunny trains from 10 to 4:30. Catch the train from Lencone Station to see the Easter Bunny at the Sea Lion Rocks tea rooms with free Easter eggs for the children. Enter our free Easter egg hunt to win a £100 voucher for the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, a £100 voucher from Waltons, a giant Easter Bunny, and a year's family pass to Gradle Glen Railway. Tickets must be purchased in advance at ggr.org.uk. Supported by your nation station, Manx Radio.
The previous message was brought to you by QVH, the island's premier serviced offices and co-working space in the heart of Douglas. Call 639 940 for more information or visit qvhpremierofficespace.com.
Paul Crane has been researching our population for well over 40 years and he's concerned about the Manx birth rate falling to its lowest since 1920. Births in the Isle of Man are now 43.9% lower than in 2010, with just 574 babies born last year. What's causing this trend and how concerned should we be about it? Paul Crane joins me on this evening's agenda at 5:30pm on Manx Radio to consider these weighty issues. Demographer Paul Morland outlines the extent of the global decline in births and concludes that governments can have no higher priority than addressing the demographic question. He suggests that this is a role for all of us. Reckon I'm getting too old for that sort of thing.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
17 minutes before 1. Why can't people use the vote at the next election using the online system we already have? I'm sure it would increase the number of votes cast. We're back into the old debate about whether online voting would be secure, really. And remember, because we vote with pieces of paper, if there's ever a problem, you just count the pieces of paper. And the people who come in on the electoral roll are ticked off by human beings. Once it goes out to computers, it depends on how much you trust computers. I'm not saying computers are always right or never wrong, but when you have pieces of paper, you can count the darn things time and time again. And Juan's with us now. Hi, Juan.
And how's the Isle of Woke this morning, Andy?
It's absolutely, the weather's rotten. And compared to what it was like last week, it's overcast, it's grey, it's windy, it's wet. The boat's late going, the planes are late going. So, and apparently it's like this until Easter Monday. The weather's going to improve on Easter Monday.
Yes, I've seen that weather front coming through there. Never mind, it's April. April's a very changeable month, always has been. Not much change there, has there? I picked up on Friday. My name was dragged up. I think was brought up there. Was it was a Trump follower, wasn't it? And misogynist. That name I can't spell again. I wish people would call me names that I could spell. Andy, was it? Who brought that up? Oh, of course it was Bonzo, wasn't it? Yeah, there you go. Never mind.
Remember. I'm sure it's done out of the deepest fondness.
Oh. Absolutely, without a thought in mind, absolutely. Just quickly before I do on to my point today, you're talking about party politics, and I've mentioned this a couple of times now, and this is my point about getting people to stand for council to kind of cut their teeth with the runnings of how governments are run and politics and you know, ring fencing money, etc. Because I think there's probably going to be a lot of people standing at the next election, and like you said there, they're not going to be experienced. So we're going to have a government going in there which would probably be inexperienced. So if people standing for council at a lower level to start with, I think is a really good idea to get involved with your parish politics. And also that serves as a pushback for government. And the point about party politics, I'm not a great lover of party politics. I think the Labour Party is broken anyway. and the whole red and blue system needs changing completely. But I think at this period in history where we are at the moment, I think party politics is important to get us back on track, i.e. a number of people rowing the Viking boat in the same direction so we get to where we want to be and not going round in circles. Just going back to the weather, Andy, lovely weather here, by the way. Just going on about SB 56, which has just passed through Senate in Florida to protect airspace from weather manipulation and chemical spreading, which was kind of interesting, isn't it? Because how do you pass a bill on something that everyone keeps saying doesn't exist?
Well, weather manipulations existed for years. I mean, silver dioxide is what they seed clouds with, don't they? They do that. They do that in Dubai. They've done that I remember Elton John did that in Russia in the 1980s when they needed to get rid of the rain for a concert. And I think either some oligarch or Gorbachev or somebody, they seeded the clouds and got rid of it. So that's fairly routine. That's happened for ages, and they've. I think
it was a McCartney concert.
Yeah, they've dusted. It was back in the USSR. They've dusted obviously agriculture for years and years and years. So there's nothing new. Getting chemicals out of aeroplanes and seeding clouds and manipulating the weather. But Florida want to stop all that.
Well, the bill's been passed. But my point is, when people come on here, and you take a neutral stance on it as well sometimes, Andy, on it, but when people come on here and go on about when I talk about chemtrails and call it like a conspiracy, how come you can put a bill through Senate and this doesn't exist? So it obviously does exist, is my point. That I'm trying to get and vilify what I've been saying for quite a few years now. When I actually came on here and asked Alf Cannon what was getting sprayed in our airspace, and he said, "Oh, go and ask an airplane expert." Well, no, I'm asking the Chief Minister what's getting sprayed on our crops and our farmland and into our air. That's what I'm asking. I mean, the Chief Minister wants to avoid it by giving us a stupid answer. Well, that just makes him look at it a little bit more stupid.
The trouble is, though, that when you talk about chemtrails, it first of all, I mean, everybody who's in the aviation industry always says that the notion of chemtrails is kind of laughable. That you can't put anything down from 30,000 feet for a start, because it would disappear off into the atmosphere. So you couldn't seed anything from 30,000 feet up in the air, and that's where those condensation trails are. They're basically water vapor turning into ice. And if people are putting chemicals into the fuel, which is what the conspiracy is, that chemicals are being put in to kind of warp people's minds, where's the evidence?
Isn't it funny, though, Andy, that in the last week we've had nothing but blue skies here in Florida, and I've sat here, the same as what I've sat in the Isle of Man, and watched them lines come out of planes and morph into like a haze.
Yeah.
And that's all there. I mean, if anyone wants to go and read it, then what the Gates Foundation are trying to do with this kind of
but
stuff
that's condensation.
all over the world.
I mean, that's ice particles at 30,000 feet. That's what it is. It's basically...
Tell me then in the last week, Andy, why have we not had any in Florida? Because the weather's not changed.
Well, I don't know. I live
why are our skies blue?
I live in Balabrui, Jew, and I don't really know.
Well, and there's my point. It's changed. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that and park that there for a minute. Talking about spraying stuff on foods and stuff like that, and going on to the food line. You mentioned something last week about redactions about school meals. What was that about, Andy?
Oh, the report. The report was heavily redacted. It was like a state secret.
It spent a fortune out on felt tip markers again. Probably the same markers that they were left over from the wind turbine stuff. But here's a question. Maybe Head of News might want to pick up, or maybe not. Or Code Red might be able to answer it. How much of the meat in our schools is currently halal meat?
Well, I think most meat is halal, isn't it? Because, in the UK, is it something like 90% of meat is halal meat?
But is this something that the people should know? I mean, halal meat is purely to satisfy the Muslim community, I believe, is it not?
Yes, as kosher meat to satisfy the Jewish community.
It is, but we don't advertise. It's not kosher meat on the island, is there? But they seem to be going down this again wokeology business of satisfying Sharia law.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what was redacted from the school meal things, but I mean, at some point we're going to find out, really, because it seems fairly innocuous. I mean, school meals, a report into school meals should be redacted. We don't really know why.
And, and this is the point that people are backing up what I've been saying for a long time on this programme about government are a little bit out of control at the moment. They're doing things and not giving the people back the answers that they want. And then they complain that they're bombarded with FOIs. And no wonder why, because no one's getting the answer of how this island is getting run. And not just the island, but we look at politics everywhere at the moment. There just seems to be this mass surge of upsetting the general people and not doing what the people asking and not listening to them. And that seems to be general. We notice it more on the Isle of Man because we're so small.
That's it. And also, but I mean, it shouldn't really be that way on the Isle of Man, purely because we are so small. We're small and perfectly formed. We know all the politicians. We know most of the civil servants. We should be able to sort this out amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I absolutely, totally agree. There's change for the sake of change. We don't need to change that much on the island. And what they're going to do is change our whole structure of living the way that they're going. And I just wonder, we've got 24 people in there. There's not a lot being said at the moment. There's a couple that are now standing up and asking questions, but out of 24 people and 12 in an upper house, there seems to be very little pushback of everything that seems to be getting put through, which is quite concerning. And obviously you can see the concern from the people that phone this programme at the moment, the people that go on the politics pages and stuff. The people are getting restless about what's going on. And like I'm going back to, I've never seen a time more so where we need party politics at this present moment to get the ship rolling again. And I pick up on Chris Thomas's point that he made in Tynwald last week about promoting and teaching and educating younger people to take senior roles within government, which should have been done quite some time ago. I was talking to a young guy in Lancaster University many years ago who was sent over and sponsored by his government to come to England to get a full education, to go back home to work for his government. And at the moment, we've got people from very far afield putting input into our government, which has been mentioned before, and Julian mentioned the senior servant in the DOI, who's come from Zambia, who's got connections with the United Nations, again, which is a very worrying industry at the moment.
Well, there's nothing wrong with coming from Zambia. That in itself, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, Andy, at all. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people who live on the island, who are brought up here, have an affinity to what's going on the island. A lot of the people that come here may be good, may be bad, and I'm not saying about their work ethic, but they have no affinity to what's going on. They'll be here for 3 years, 5 years, and then they're gone. Yeah. They're already looking for new positions.
Okay.
So we want people who are invested into the island for the future of the island. Like we said, keep our community as it is if we can.
Okay, all right, appreciate it, Julie. Thanks for calling today, Julian. 5-1 now on Manx Radio. Why has NATO? This is Liz D on Double O. Why has NATO admitted to putting chemicals into the atmosphere? Why is snow melt on mountain tops not fit for drinking? Says Liz D. Just give me some evidence, Liz. That will be absolutely fine. People put chemicals into the atmosphere for years. Farming chemicals, agricultural chemicals. The American military put Agent Orange into the Vietnamese jungle years and years ago. So that has happened. But the concept of chemtrails at the moment doesn't really stand up. And if you can convince everyone otherwise, it doesn't seem to be the accepted wisdom. Crop spraying and chemtrails are two different things, says Mark. Crop spraying is real. The second, chemtrails are nonsense. This is Mark's opinion, by the way. Due to the change in direction on net zero, the bigger playground, surely it will be wise for us to see how it pans out, while giving a chance for us to explore higher yields of power from our own backyard moving forward in the future using what we already had, then building from that. With plenty of water to play with, Lady Isabella should be turning to raise electricity for a start, says CC. That's it. Thanks for joining in today. Appreciate your company. Thanks to Chris on the phones. Back tomorrow with another Open Line.
WINT.